Back in 2003, the music world was at a crossroads. Digital downloads were on the rise, iTunes had taken over, and traditional record sales were crashing hard. Albums were getting pulled apart track by track. Those carefully crafted full-length records that once told a story from beginning to end.
See that? That should be the vibe.
Were now getting chopped up into singles, tossed onto early playlists, or scattered across hard drives and file-sharing networks. For the first time in modern music history, the album, the format that had defined entire generations, was starting to lose its grip on the culture. And it was in that moment that Rolling Stone dropped their list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. But it wasn't just a ranking, it was a statement. It was a way of saying albums still matter. Even as the industry was chasing speed and convenience, this list stood up for the album as a cohesive work of art. Something meant to be felt from start to finish. Over time, that list became the most read and most hotly debated feature in the magazine's history. They gave it a small update in 2012, but in 2020, they completely overhauled it, brought in over 300 artists, producers, critics, and insiders to share their personal top 50 albums. And then in December of 2023, they updated it again, which brings us to today. I have partnered with my friends at Vinyl.com for a new music series where I take deep dives into the albums that have shaped us. In this episode, I'm diving into a few of my favorite albums from Rolling Stone's 500 list, but with a twist. Since I talk about rock music all the time, I'm intentionally skipping traditional rock records for this one. I would love for you to hit the subscribe button as we continue to build this special music community together. Also, if any of the records I mentioned today belong in your collection, head over to Vinyl.com. Use my code THEGROOVE to get 10% off of anything on the site. That link and code are in the show notes below. Let's dive in, starting with my first pick. The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, which is number 163 on Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time. This is the original, by the way. Saturday Night Fever is more than a soundtrack. It's a cultural landmark. Released on November 15th, 1977 by RSO Records, it's the official soundtrack to the film starring a then-rising John Travolta. Packaged as a double LP, the album became a massive commercial force. Before Thriller came along, Saturday Night Fever was the best-selling album in music history. And even now, it remains the second best-selling soundtrack of all time, only behind The Bodyguard, with over 40 million copies sold worldwide. The album's primary architects were the Bee Gees, who wrote and performed the majority of the songs, with hits like Stayin' Alive, Night Fever, How Deep Is Your Love, and More Than a Woman. The soundtrack didn't just define disco, it mainstreamed it. It gave a global stage to a genre that had been born in underground clubs. The music had rhythm, soul, and emotional depth, and suddenly it was everywhere. Its cultural legacy is undeniable, and it still holds up musically, emotionally, and socially. It's been sampled, referenced, and reinterpreted across generations of pop and dance music. For me, this album is more than stats and accolades. It's one of my first musical memories. I can picture the disco ball, the dancing, my parents' sweet Emerson record player / 8-track combo, and this music. And that's the magic of a truly great record. It's part of history, lives in the culture, and it lives in us. From the Bee Gees to the king of pop, if Saturday Night Fever was the soundtrack that defined disco, Michael Jackson's Thriller was the album that redefined pop music itself, musically, visually, commercially, and culturally. And it is number 12 on Rolling Stone's greatest 500 albums of all time. Released on November 30th, 1982, Thriller was Michael's sixth studio album, produced by the late, great Quincy Jones and recorded over the course of 8 months. It used pop, rock, R&B, punk, and even a touch of horrorcore in a way the world had never heard before. Want to Be Starting Something, Beat It, Billie Jean, Human Nature, and of course, Thriller. Each one could have anchored its own album, but together they formed a cultural juggernaut. Thriller didn't just dominate the charts, it completely shattered them. It won a record-breaking 8 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year, and became the first album certified 30 times platinum in the US alone.
7 of the 9 tracks would become top 10 hits, and 30 years later, Thriller is still the best-selling album in the world.
Thriller also broke down racial barriers. It didn't just change music, it changed television. At the time, MTV had yet to feature black artists in consistent mainstream rotation. That changed with Billie Jean. CBS Records reportedly threatened to pull all their artists unless MTV added the video in their rotation. They did, and the audience response was immediate and overwhelming. Beat It followed, and with it, Eddie Van Halen's blazing guitar solo, one of the most iconic genre crossovers in music history.
You got it, Eddie! Eddie! Eddie!
Michael became MTV's first global superstar. The Thriller video was a 14-minute cinematic masterpiece that changed everything. It wasn't just a music video, it was a film, a full-blown narrative with makeup, choreography, and a level of ambition the music world had never seen. It transformed music videos from promotional tools into cultural events. And for me, that's where the magic really took hold. I had the making of Thriller on VHS, and I was obsessed. Watching Michael rehearse choreography, transform into the werewolf, and interact with the crew, it was just all so electrifying. And I was just a kid, maybe 3 or 4, so yes, it absolutely terrified me, but it also fascinated me. That tape didn't just show me how the video was made. It showed me what was possible. It was a first-of-its-kind release, and it became the best-selling VHS music video of all time. It set the template for the modern pop rollout, genre-blending production, cinematic visuals, choreography as storytelling, and a global multimedia campaign before that was even a concept. More than 4 decades later, its influence still defines how pop is performed, produced, and presented. Thriller didn't just raise the bar, it is the bar. If Thriller redefined what pop could be, Purple Rain proved that the boundaries between rock, soul, funk, and cinematic storytelling could be obliterated entirely and rebuilt in Prince's image. It is number 8 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list. Released on June 25, 1984, Purple Rain was Prince's 6th studio album, but his first credited with The Revolution, his dynamic, genre-defying band. It also served as the soundtrack to the film of the same name, a semi-autobiographical rock drama that not only introduced Prince to the mainstream film world, but crystallized his image as an artist who could do it all. Write, produce, perform, direct his vision, and control every detail with surgical precision. The album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 and stayed there for an astonishing 24 weeks. It eventually sold over 25 million copies worldwide and earned Prince 2 Grammy Awards, an Oscar for Best Original Song Score, and his first major commercial breakthrough on the global stage. But more than the numbers, Purple Rain was a declaration of creative freedom. It blended searing guitar solos with church-like ballads, raw vulnerability with unapologetic sensuality. When Doves Cry had no bass line, an intentional choice that defied everything about radio conventions, and yet it became a chart-topping anthem. Let's Go Crazy opened with a full-blown sermon and ended with a psychedelic shred. And then, of course, there's the title track, a slow-burning, emotional epic that builds to one of the most cathartic guitar solos in music history. Prince tore down walls between rock and R&B, funk and pop, black radio and white radio, male and female, sacred and profane. It was and still is a masterclass in how an artist can own their contradictions and let that tension become the art. Purple Rain was a reminder that identity can be fluid, performative, powerful, and that self-expression has no rules. And its legacy is everywhere. You hear it in genre-fluid artists like Janelle Monáe, The Weeknd, and Her. You see it in artists who refuse to be boxed in, who write, produce, perform, and command their vision like Prince taught us we could. Purple Rain wasn't just an album, it was a coronation, and it still reigns. While Purple Rain filled stadiums with sound and emotion, Raising Hell kicked open the door for hip-hop to do the same, and it's number 209 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time. This right here was my introduction to hip-hop. By 1986, Run-D.M.C had already shifted the landscape with their stripped-down, no-frills sound. But Raising Hell was the turning point. Their third album, produced by Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons, changed the game. Their beats, their rhymes, their delivery, all with a look that was instantly iconic. The black hats, gold chains, unlaced Adidas. They were not trying to blend in. They were defining the standard. The moment that opened the floodgates was Walk This Way. Rick Rubin had the idea to re-record the Aerosmith hit, not as a sample, but as a full-on collaboration. Run-D.M.C didn't even know the original song. They actually thought Rick Rubin was joking.
Is this the first time that you've met each other?
Yes.
But they trusted him, and once they met Steven Tyler and Joe Perry in the studio, something clicked, and they were about to create something that would break every boundary. This was not a remix, it was a reset. The music video for Walk This Way brought that moment to life in the clearest, most unforgettable way. Of course, this wall represented all the divisions at the time. Rock and rap, black and white, underground and mainstream, and suddenly the wall comes down and the two groups are performing together on the same stage. And it truly opened up a whole new world of bringing genres, cultures, sounds, and humans together. But Raising Hell wasn't just about that one moment. My Adidas turned a personal style into global brand power and basically ignited the concept of artist endorsement culture. It's Tricky brought energy and bounce without losing edge. Peter Piper put the spotlight on the DJ, reminding the world where the power in hip-hop really started. The album went platinum, the first rap record to ever do it, and then double platinum. It earned the group a Grammy nomination and opened doors that hadn't even existed yet. Also, shout out Darryl McDaniels, King of Rock, not just an amazing talent, but inspiring human being. Much love, New York represent. From Queens to Manhattan, the next wave was coming. Messier, funnier, louder. Let's talk Beastie Boys. Released on November 15th, 1986, the day after my 7th birthday, License to Ill was the debut album by the Beastie Boys and is number 192 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time. It wasn't just a breakout moment for the group, it was a cultural collision. 3 white, punk-rooted Jewish MCs from New York teamed up with Def Jam and producer Rick Rubin to deliver a record that mashed together hip-hop, hard rock, party anthems, and punk energy. It arrived loud, raw, and fully formed, and I loved it. License to Ill became the first rap album to hit number 1 on the Billboard 200. It sold over 10 million copies in the US and helped push hip-hop deeper into the mainstream, especially on platforms like MTV, where the Beastie's visuals and energy resonated with rock audiences in a completely new way. The production was stripped down and aggressive. Rick Rubin's signature style, booming beats, rock guitar riffs, and zero polish gave the album its sonic punch. No Sleep Till Brooklyn featured Slayer's Kerry King on guitar. Paul Revere flipped the script with a reverse beat and cowboy-style storytelling. Brass Monkey turned chaos into chemistry. And Fight for Your Right, originally written as a parody of Frat Boy Rebellion, became an unintentional anthem for it, showing how easily satire and sincerity can blur when the sound hits that hard.
You gotta fight for your right to party.
Let's just agree that song still holds up. It is an anthem for all time. After the Beastie Boys blew the doors off genre conventions with defiant swagger, George Michael walked through with poise, polish, and a singular vision of pop stardom that had never quite existed before. Released on October 30th, 1987, Faith marked George Michael's debut as a solo artist and is number 151 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time.
'Cause I gotta have faith.
Following his global success with Wham!, Faith immediately established him as a force of creative control and crossover brilliance. He wrote, arranged, and produced the album almost entirely on his own. That kind of creative autonomy wasn't typical for a pop artist at the time, especially not someone just stepping out from the glow of a beloved group. Faith was sleek and confident, yet emotionally layered. It borrowed from funk, rock, R&B, and gospel without ever feeling forced. The title track opened with a rockabilly guitar riff that felt vintage and fresh at the same time, while Father Figure and One More Try slowed things down with intimacy and longing. I Want Your Sex was so edgy and controversial, but George never backed down from pushing the boundaries of what a pop star could say, sound like, or look like.
I'm not going to sit and think, well, they wouldn't fancy me if I wasn't a pop star, if I wasn't a singer, if I wasn't rich. Because I am all those things, you know. That's part of what attracts people to me now.
The album exploded. Critics loved it, and so did everyone else. I was obsessed with it. It spent 12 weeks at #1 on the Billboard 200, sold over 25 million copies worldwide, and took home the Grammy for Album of the Year. George also made history as the first white solo artist to top the Billboard R&B albums chart.
I've been a lover of soul music since I was a kid, and I'd like to thank everyone who voted for me. I can't believe it. Thank you very much.
Visually, Faith helped redefine male pop stardom. The leather jacket, the aviator shades, the stubble, the swagger. It was Elvis, Prince, and MTV era edge all channeled through George's unique lens. And beneath the style, there was substance. These songs explored desire, shame, vulnerability, and independence. George wasn't performing someone else's fantasy. He was navigating his own complexities in real time, and that honesty gave the album weight. Decades later, Faith still holds its power. It wasn't just a solo debut, it was a blueprint for artistic freedom wrapped in perfect pop. George Michael's Faith was all about taking control, owning his voice, embracing complexity, and shaking off expectations. 2 years later, Janet Jackson took that same spirit and made it revolutionary. She didn't just define herself, she challenged everything around her. Released on September 19, 1989, Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation 1814 stands as one of the most ambitious and important pop albums ever made and is 339 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list. It took everything Janet had built with control, artistic independence, crossover appeal, personal power, and pushed it into new territory. Braver, bolder, and even more badass. I love Janet Jackson. Always have, always will. Obviously rocking the shirt.
Have you heard about the nominations for the American Music Awards and the Grammys?
Yeah, I have. But to be honest with you, the real award for me is the kids going out and buying the album and loving it.
This album was full of socially conscious messages with club-ready production, all while expanding what a pop record could be and what a pop star could stand for.
But it seems like most of the dance music that's been out, it hasn't been anything like this, and that's why I wanted to do something different. Instead of the kids just going from party to party, jumping around, give them something to listen to, something to think about, what's going on in the world.
Working once again with producers Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, Janet crafted an album that tackled racism, poverty, addiction, illiteracy, and systemic violence, all within the framework of mainstream pop and R&B. Songs like Rhythm Nation, State of the World, and The Knowledge delivered hard truths with precision and purpose, while tracks like All Right, Come Back to Me, and Love Will Never Do Without You offered balance through joy, sensuality, and emotional vulnerability. Rhythm Nation 1814 became the only album in history to score #1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100 across 3 different calendar years. It tied the record for most top 5 singles from a single album, 7 in total, and went on to sell over 12 million copies worldwide, becoming one of the best-selling albums of the decade. With Black Cat, Janet became the first and only artist to score a #1 hit that she wrote and produced entirely on her own. Also, we need to quickly talk about that Love Will Never Do Without You video, which served as the directorial debut for legendary fashion photographer Herb Ritz. This was a new image for Janet, a stark contrast to the militaristic visuals from Rhythm Nation. It was a departure from her elaborate dance routine productions. Instead, this was an adorable, vulnerable, sensual side of Janet, and I remember thinking that Janet is the most beautiful woman I have ever seen in my life.
I heard that you were really upset because I gave stuff to Michael and the rest of the band, so I was going to give you my Rhythm Nation tour jacket.
Wait, this'll smell like your perfume?
More than 30 years later, this album's message still feels urgent. Its sound still feels fresh, and Janet's blueprint as an artist with a voice, a vision, and something to fight for still echoes through every generation that came after her.
If Janet, through her music, through her messages of hope and peace, can touch 3 people, it's good she did the album.
I also want to share that in addition to Janet, I'm a massive Jam and Lewis fan as well. And I've had the great honor of having Mr. Jimmy Jam on the Allison Hagendorf show. And it was one of my favorite interviews I have ever done.
So now when she came back for Rhythm Nation, it was where Janet was at that point in her life, was being concerned about what was happening in people's lives and then wanting to commentate on it.
Jimmy was kind enough to help get me tickets to see Janet at the Forum last year, and I had the opportunity to briefly meet Janet after the show. Now, I am fortunate that I get to meet artists and celebrities all the time, but Janet, she's in a league of her own, and I have to say, I was not cool at all.
Oh my God, okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
I think I gushed to her and I said something like, I am who I am because of you, which I was so out of body while saying it, but Janet was so gracious and was like, wow, thank you. Well, I'm still floating from that experience, and here is the photo of that moment captured. Okay, moving on. If Rhythm Nation was a blueprint for revolution, then Madonna's The Immaculate Collection was a monument to pop dominance. Unapologetic, provocative, and perfectly curated. Released on November 9th, 1990, around my 11th birthday, The Immaculate Collection wasn't a studio album. It was a greatest hits compilation and is number 138 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums list.
The icon of the 90s, Madonna, The Immaculate Collection, the music, the video, the hits.
It didn't play like a retrospective. It played like a declaration. Think about how big you have to be in order to put out a greatest hits compilation after being on the scene for less than 10 years. This is how much ground Madonna had already covered, how many cultural buttons she'd pushed, and how deeply her music had permeated the mainstream, all in less than a decade. The album featured 15 of her most iconic singles from 1983 to 1990, remixed and remastered using a then-new technique called Q-Sound, which gave the tracks a spatial depth that felt futuristic. From Holiday to Like a Virgin, Into the Groove to Vogue, it wasn't just a hit parade, it was a sonic snapshot of how much the sound and shape of pop had changed under her influence. She also included 2 new songs, Justify My Love and Rescue Me, and once again ignited controversy. Justify My Love, co-written with Lenny Kravitz, was accompanied by a sexually charged black and white video that MTV banned almost immediately. The move only amplified the conversation around censorship, sexuality, and female agency, and Madonna stood at the center of it, not flinching.
It is my artistic expression, and for me, a video is the filmic expression of the song, you know, a visual that describes what the song is about, you know, and these feelings exist, and I'm just dealing with the truth here in my video.
Another favorite black and white video of mine was her video for Cherish, also directed by fashion photographer Herb Ritz. I guess I have a style. At the time of release, the Immaculate Collection became the best-selling compilation album by a solo artist in history. It's now sold over 30 million copies worldwide. But beyond the numbers, it's the legacy that endures. Madonna didn't just make hit records. She turned pop stardom into a platform. She pushed boundaries, shape-shifted, and never asked for permission. I got to see Madonna on her most recent celebration tour at LA's Forum, and it was hands down one of the best shows I have ever seen. The production, the dancers, but honestly, just her. Madonna is one of a kind, and we are lucky she is in our lifetime. Madonna made reinvention an art form. TLC made authenticity a superpower. TLC redefined what pop and R&B could feel like: grounded, gritty, sensual, and unapologetically real. Released on November 15th, 1994, the day after my 15th birthday, CrazySexyCool was TLC's second studio album, and it remains one of the most essential R&B records of the 90s, and honestly, any decade. And it was 218 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums list. The sound of CrazySexyCool was smooth but hard-hitting, a blend of soulful melodies, hip-hop beats, and live instrumentation that felt effortlessly fresh. With production from Dallas Austin, Babyface, Jermaine Dupri, and Organized Noise, the album flowed from silky slow jams like Red Light Special to introspective grooves like Diggin' On You to confident funk-driven standouts like Creep. And then came Waterfalls, a socially conscious anthem wrapped in one of the most unforgettable hooks of the decade. Waterfalls became the heart of the album's message, a song about desire and consequence, survival and silence. It spoke candidly about HIV, addiction, and alienation without ever sounding preachy. The video, ghostly, cinematic, and years ahead of its time, made history as the first by a Black female group to be nominated for Video of the Year at the MTV VMAs. It wasn't just a milestone, it was a message. TLC had something to say, and the world was listening.
Don't go chasing waterfalls. Please stick to the rivers and the...
CrazySexyCool went on to sell over 14 million copies worldwide, making TLC the first girl group to earn a diamond certified album in the US, and won the Grammy for Best R&B Album and solidified their place as one of the most important voices in contemporary R&B. But beyond the numbers, it was the balance that made the album timeless. These women were soft and strong, sexual and spiritual, playful and political. They weren't manufactured, they were multidimensional. That authenticity landed deeply with a generation navigating identity, love, and self-worth in real time. Even now, the influence of CrazySexyCool is everywhere in artists like SZA, Ari Lennox, Doja Cat, and Summer Walker, who carry that same blend of softness and strength. And on a personal note, getting to know Chili has been a true gift. She is every bit as talented, gracious, and beautiful inside and out as you would imagine. I've always respected talent, but when it's matched by genuine kindness, humility, and light, that's the kind of person I feel lucky to know. My little boys call her Aunt Chili, and honestly, it doesn't get much cooler than that. TLC made it cool to be real. Lauryn Hill made it powerful to be honest. By the late 90s, Lauryn Hill had already changed the game once as the standout voice in the Fugees, blending rap, melody, and message with elegance and force. But no one was prepared for what came next. On August 25th, 1998, she released her solo debut, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and everything shifted. It ranks as number 10 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time. It was the kind of album that didn't just land. It arrived with intention, with weight, with truth. From the first few seconds, a school bell ringing, a classroom roll call, you could feel it wasn't going to follow anyone else's rules. She co-wrote, co-produced, and oversaw the entire album at 23 years old. And she didn't mold herself to fit a genre. She built her own space. Miseducation moved between hip-hop, soul, gospel, reggae, and R&B, and it moved us. Doo-Wop, That Thing debuted at number 1, the first time a solo female hip-hop artist had ever done that. X Factor captured heartbreak in a way that felt sacred and unfiltered. To Zion brought motherhood and devotion into the center of popular music. The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill sold over 20 million copies worldwide and became the first hip-hop album in history to win Album of the Year at the Grammys.
This is crazy because this is hip-hop music, and you know what I mean? It's like...
Lauryn won 5 Grammys that night, more than any female artist had ever won in a single evening at that time. To this day, this album's influence continues to echo through artists like Erykah Badu, Beyonce, Solange, SZA, Her, and Rhapsody. So much of how we talk about love, loss, faith, identity, and womanhood in music today traces back to this record. The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill was a timeless album, igniting a spiritual shift in music that continues to reverberate in our hearts and spirits today. After Lauryn Hill redefined what vulnerability could sound like, OutKast redefined what hip-hop could even be. By 2003, OutKast had already shaken up hip-hop. But when Speakerboxxx, The Love Below dropped, everything changed. A cultural reset was upon us, and it ranks number 290 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time.
My next guests are Grammy Award-winning rap duo. Their current CD, Speakerboxxx, The Love Below, premiered #1 on the Billboard charts and sold 4 million copies. Please welcome OutKast featuring Big Boy.
2 discs, 2 visions. Big Boy held it down with Speakerboxxx, hard-hitting, funky, rooted in Atlanta, full of bounce and bars. And then Andre 3000 came in with The Love Below, and it was something else entirely. Genre-defying, romantic, weird, jazzy, psychedelic. It was hip-hop, but it was also like Prince and Frank Zappa, Cab Calloway, and then something just totally new. And then Hey Ya happened. That song was everywhere. And I don't mean like, oh, popular on radio everywhere. I mean, you couldn't walk into a store, turn on the TV, go to a game, or step into a party without hearing it. And you were mad about it. Everyone danced, everyone shouted, shake it like a Polaroid picture. It crossed every line, genre, generation. So while Hey Ya was dominating the airwaves, The Way You Move was quietly climbing right behind it. And for a stretch in early 2004, OutKast held the #1 and #2 spots on the Billboard Hot 100 at the same time. Then they did something incredibly rare. The song swapped places. The Way You Move replaced Hey Ya at #1, making OutKast the first act to do that with 2 completely different songs from the same album. The last time anything like that happened, the Beatles. Back in 1964, that's the level of cultural impact we are talking about here. The album went straight to #1, sold over 11 million copies, and won 3 Grammys, including Album of the Year. First time a hip-hop duo ever won it. Only the second time a rap album had taken home that honor at all. But beyond the stats, what made this album hit so hard was the freedom in it. They weren't trying to fit into anything. They were just making what they felt. And together, they showed that hip-hop could be anything and still be undeniable. OutKast is one of my all-time favorite groups, and I still can't believe I got to hang with Big Boy at his Stankonia studio in Atlanta and have him as a guest on my show, The Top 20 Countdown. Honestly, moments like these never get old for me. At the end of the day, I'm just a music fan who somehow turned that obsession into a career instead of using my pre-med degree. I think I made the right move. Yeah. So many iconic albums in Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list, and these were just some of my personal favorites. What are some of yours? I would love to know. Share below. My next video, I'll be diving into some of my favorite albums and artists of the last 10 years. I'm really excited about this one. I'd love for you to hit the subscribe button so you can get notified of upcoming videos, and use my personal code, THEGROOVE, to get 10% off of anything you get at vinyl.com. And until next time, let kindness be your superpower.